Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. So we are holding. I hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining me for this share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelek Hey Nun Gimel Amid Beis. We're middle of Hilchos Pesach Siman Tuf Nun Vav. I see my connection over here blinked for a second. Hope everybody is still there. So we're holding in Siman Tuf Nun Vav, and we're going to start today from Sif Beis. I think this is back up. I hope it's back up. Okay, well, in any case, I'm going to keep on going. I hope it's working. I don't see any viewers on YouTube. Oh, hopefully it's running. Okay, so Tuf Nun Vav Sif Beis. So we said yesterday that when you knead the dough for the matzah, you're not supposed to knead a large dough. You're supposed to knead a small dough. And the reason we said for this is because if you knead a dough that's large, we're afraid it's going to be too big for somebody to manipulate the dough with his hands to prevent it from becoming chametz. So what's going to happen is you're going to have this very large dough. Person is only going to be able to work part of the dough. The rest of the dough is going to be sitting, and that's going to be ripe for becoming chametz. And therefore, we said you have to make a small dough, and we quantified a small dough by saying it should not be larger than the sheer challah. Now, the Mechaber says in Siv Beis, on Nun Gimel Amud Beis, Imlosh yoser mishir zeh. Let's say somebody needs a dough that's larger than the sheer challah. He makes a larger dough for the matzah. Mutter b'di'evet. The Mechaber says b'di'evet, that's okay. B'di'evet, you could use that dough. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and vav, imlosh. So if you did make a large dough, it's okay b'di'evet. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hatam, the reason it's okay b'di'evet is, da'avsha anu oimrim, de'ein esek moyel be'isa gedola kazu shaloi tavar lidei chimutz. Even though we said yesterday that we don't want you to make a large dough, because a person is not going to be able to work the dough and prevent it from becoming chametz. He says, let's put this in the proper perspective. You're right. One person alone will not be able to manipulate the dough sufficiently to make sure that it doesn't come to chimutz. But it's not worse than a piece of dough that's sitting without being worked at all. The kaimelon, the ein lesser, calls man shloisha shir mil. Even if nobody is working the dough at all, the dough is not going to become chametz in less than 18 minutes. A shir mil we always have. So therefore, the Mechaber says, you made a very large dough. You're right. So the person is not going to be able to work the whole dough to prevent it from becoming chametz. So in a worst case scenario, this dough is going to be like a dough that was left alone. So fine, a dough that's left alone, you have 18 minutes until it becomes chametz. Ice cut and zayin, therefore mutter b'di'eved, therefore b'di'eved you could use this dough. Afilu avar v'losh yoser b'mezid. Says the Chavetz Chaim, this is okay, even if you made this very large dough b'mezid. You intentionally ignored this halacha, and you intentionally made a large dough for the matzah, still in all, b'di'eved it's okay. However, the Chavetz Chaim does point out, Ubisha shir mil b'lishasai, kaidem sheyaschilu ha'oizrim l'sayeya b'shas haricha. Let's say you made this very large dough, and you waited more than 18 minutes until some other people came to assist in working the dough, maybe in rolling out the matzahs or what have you. So you made this large dough, and now you had this large dough out for more than 18 minutes, and now we have a real problem. Now we really have to worry that part of the dough was not being worked for 18 minutes, and maybe that part of the dough became chametz. Still in all, the Chavetz Chaim says, Tzididu kama achronim, many achronim rule, and he brings down over here the Bach, the Magen Avram, the Pri Chadash, the Maimar Mordechai. He says many achronim rule the lasvara hanal yesh lesar gam b'di'evet. The Chavetz Chaim says, according to these achronim, based on the rationale that we said earlier, that the problem is that you're not going to be manipulating the dough, and therefore it could come to chimutz. So based on that, we would have to say that b'diavad, if the dough sat for more than 18 minutes, you have a problem. And even b'diavad, this would be usher. See this on Facebook. This is not working. I don't know how it's working. I hope it's working well for the Olam on YouTube. I see that the connection is schwach. I have a funny feeling with everybody using the web. I don't know if there's not insufficient bandwidth, but all day I've been experiencing some problems. If somebody could drop me maybe a comment on the sidebar over here and let me know if you're able to see it. So, Tziddu kamach roidim belasfara nal yesh leser gam b'di'evet. Tekevon d'shiaru chachamim demeroiv godla ef shelo adam echad lasik b'chola isa karoi. Since the Chazal said that when you have a dough that's larger than the shir challah, one person is not going to be able to work the dough. So then, for at least part of this dough, it's as if this dough was sitting there without anybody working it at all, and therefore it sat for more than a share mil. It's going to become chametz. So b'di'evet, even you can't use it. V'yesh poskim shehekelu be'ikr den zeh b'yameinu. However, the Chavetz Chaim does say that there are poskim who are very makel in this halacha nowadays. Uladaitam, and according to their opinion, this worry that if you have too large a dough, it's going to become chametz, was only a problem in days of old. Where it was one person working alone, and he did the lisha, he was the connector, he needed the dough, and then after he needed the dough, he made the pieces of dough, and then he rolled out the matzahs. And they did everything by hand without rolling pins or anything. And everything, the whole process took a very long time. And also they had very small ovens. They were not able to put a lot of matzahs into the oven at the same time. So a lot of matzahs were sitting out on the table without being worked on. And because of all of this, because the matzah making process was such a slow process, that's why the Chachamim in days of old said they didn't want you to make a large dough. But nowadays, where in the matzah making process, we have lots of workers. We have a knater, and then after the knater, we have somebody rolling it out and working it. And then we have a lady who takes it and breaks the pieces and gives out the pieces. Then we have all the women who are actually rolling the matzahs. And our ovens are large. They can hold a lot of matzahs in them. And we do the lisha and the rolling and the baking. Everything is done with alacrity. Everything is done with zrizas gadol, right? Everything is rush. Ein lahachmir. There's no need to be stringent. Even if you did need a very large dough, because you're certainly not going to have a chimutz problem, because everything is done with zrizas gadol, with a lot of working, and you won't have a problem. And the Chavetz Chaim says that l'chatchila nowadays the olam is accustomed to following this opinion. Ve'ein limchais biyadam, and you do not have to protest against this. Because they certainly have opinions that they can rely on. Mikol Mokayim. However, the Chavetz Chaim does say, Kol Yerei Shamayim Yira Lahachmir Kedei Rishayna Af B'Yameinu. Even nowadays, a Yerei Shamayim should be machmir like this first opinion, and we should not make a myra that's larger than the Sher Chala, and indeed, we do not do that. Indeed, we make small myras. Ubeprat B'Yeshuvim Ketanim, and specifically in small villages, when when you have a small little bakery and you don't have a lot of workers working on the matzahs. Certainly, you should be nizar not to make a larger dough than what is described here. Kasva paiskim. The paiskim do right. Ki kapdinan shaloi lolosh yoisem misherzeh. When could we afford to have this hakpada and not to make a large dough? Kishuhulosh isa is harbe. That's when you're going to make a lot of doughs, like what we do in the bakery. The kneter makes one dough, gives it out, then he makes another dough, gives it out, makes another dough, gives it out. So that all of these doughs, where each one is less than a shir challah, ultimately they're all going to be mitztarif, they're all going to combine to make a shir that's chayiv and challah, which are the halachas that we're about to discuss in the coming siman and tafnun zayin. But let's say you're doing a little backyard matzah baking project, and you're not going to have a lot of doughs. You're going to make one dough. So now, if you're going to make one dough, don't make such a small dough that's less than the shir challah. Shema lo by kashir, because maybe you indeed will not have a shir challah. Then you're going to make a bracha to be mafresh challah, and it's going to be a bracha of atola because you don't have a shir challah. So yeah, you shouldn't make an overly large dough. Don't make a dough that's larger than the shir challah, but don't make a dough that's less than the shir challah, because then you can have a bracha of atola. So just to recapture, because we've gone off on some tangents over here. The bottom line so far, what we're saying in this siman is that we want the dough to be a dough that is small enough that one person will be able to work the dough so that we know the entire dough is being worked, and we don't have to worry that part of it is being left alone and it might come lidei chimutz. He said that when you're working bizrizos and you have a lot of workers and we don't have a problem because it's not going to sit, it's zikha not going to sit for more than 18 minutes. He said you could be makel, but even in such cases, he said, when we are working with zrizos and we have a fast operation, it's still not kedai to be makel, and Yerei Shamayim should be machmer. B'diavad, it's okay. Says the Mechaber in Siv Gimel, even though on Yom Tov the halacha is that you're not allowed to measure your flour. You're allowed to bake on Yom Tov. If it's Yom Tov and you need challah, you're allowed to bake. So it's like nefesh. So if it's Pesach and you need matzah, really you're allowed to bake. Now there's a restriction, and that is that when you bake on Yom Tov, you can't use your measuring cup to go measure the challah. You're not allowed to measure out. You're not allowed to do medida. You're not allowed to measure out your flour. Why can't you measure out your flour? Because the truth is, even though malacha is mutter for eichel nefesh, but the measuring of the flour is not strictly a requirement of eichel nefesh. You know, if you have a little bit more flour or a little bit less flour, it's not going to damage your bread. Indeed, if you take a look at challah recipes, all of the challah recipes tell you approximates when it comes to the flour and the water, and they tell you that it's going to depend on the weather, and it's going to depend on the exact flour, it's going to depend on a lot of factors. Sometimes you might need a little bit more, sometimes you might need a little bit less. So it's hard to say that the medida, the measuring, is so necessary for eichel nefesh. Therefore, we're going to see later on that the measuring of the flour is asar on Yom Tov. Now, what's wrong with measuring in the first place? It looks like you're being isik and mekach umemkar. It looks like you're doing business. Because when do you measure flour? You measure flour when you're selling flour. Somebody comes to buy a pound of flour, you measure out a pound of flour. So we don't want you to measure, because when you measure, when you measure, it looks a little bit like you're being Isaac and Mekach Memkar, which is also on Yom Tov, and therefore the Medida is also. However, over here in our case, says the Mechaber, even though typically you're not allowed to measure out flour on Yom Tov in order to knead it for bread, b'Yom Tov shel Pesach, on Pesach, she'ein loshin isa gedola me'isarein, where we have this problem that we've been discussing in this siman, where we don't allow you to make a large dough because of the problems that we've been discussing, mutter limdaid. On Pesach, it's mutter to measure, because we want to make sure that you don't make an overly large dough. Now, there would seem to be a very simple answer. Why do I have to be matter you to measure? So you shouldn't make a large dough. Just make a small dough. Make a dough that is near al einayim. You could see with your eyes that this is less than the shir challah. Why do I have to be matter measuring? So let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Cotton Ches, Afa Pisha Ein Moidedim, even though we're not allowed to measure flour for baking on Yom Tov, Kidim Avur Lakamon Siman Tov Vav Sif Aleph, like we're going to see later on, and that's what I explained to you, that you're not allowed to do it because it looks like Mekach Memkar, and it's not strictly required for your baking. But on Pesach, where we have this problem that you can't make a dough gedola me'isarain larger than an asiris ha'efa, than the shir challah, ice cut and test gedola me'isarain. Now, here's the Chavetz Chaim Bavarns the question that I mentioned. Ubepachais me'isarain ein kedai limdoid. Even though the words translate a little bit funny here, what the Chavetz Chaim is saying is, don't tell me that you'll just go ahead and make a small dough. We don't want you to measure out. Doesn't mean to measure because we're not using a measuring cup. What he means is, what are you telling me that you're going to be matir measuring? I have a way where you could avoid being matir measuring. Just make sure that you make a dough that's less than an isarin without measuring it. You could see that this is a small dough. Says the Chavetz Chaim, we don't want you to make a small dough. Why? Because if you make a small dough, you can't be mafresh challah with a bracha. We want you to be able to make a shir challah because we want you to be mafresh challah with a bracha. So you don't have the eitzah to just make a recognizably small dough because then you lose the shir challah. At the same time, we want to make sure that you don't make an overly large dough and run into the potential problem of chimutz. So therefore, we give you an eitzah. We tell you, even though normally on Yom Tov we don't matter measuring, we're going to let you measure so that you could measure exactly the shir challah, make the shir challah be mafresh challah with a bracha, and we don't have to worry that you're going to make it overly large. That's the first opinion in the Mechaber. Now go back in the Mechaber, on the bottom line. The Mechaber says, however, v'yesh oisrim, there are those that prohibit using the measuring. Rather, you should use an approximation and make sure that you're not making it overly large. And make sure that you don't make it larger than the shir challah. So now what are we going to do with the problem we just mentioned? Maybe you're going to make it too small and you won't be able to be mafresh challah. So says the Mishnah Berurah in Ice Cotton Yud. V'lo yarbe. Do it. Don't use a measuring cup. Make it recognizably small. That way you'll be sure that you're not making it larger than the shir challah, so we don't have the chimutz problem. Or l'inyan bracha. And as far as the problem that we had mentioned before, how are you going to be mafresh challah with a bracha? He tells you in the eitzah, Yikarev isa zul isa acheres. Make multiple doughs. Make more than one dough. And then you'll take the doughs and you'll put them next to each other, like we're going to see right away in the beginning of the next Siman. Ukilokhamon reish Siman Tafton Zion, and the Shema Ein Ba Yisarin, like we're going to say right now in Tafton Zion, that we always want you to take the small doughs and put them together and be mitzaref them for a shir challah, in case some of the doughs are too small. So the same thing over here. Don't use a measuring cup on Yom Tov. Just make sure that you're making a small dough. And as far as the shir challah, so you'll make multiple small doughs, and then you'll pull them together, and you'll be mitzaref them for a shir challah, and you'll be able to be mafresh with a bracha. And now, with the end of this siman, now we're going to jump into Siman Taf Nun Zayin, which is complex, and we're going to work on the halachas of challah and how we apply the halachas of challah to the baking of the matzahs. I think we're going to have a couple of open loops in today's share, a little bit, that will become answered as we continue going through the siman. So I'll say share on the beginning of the siman now, and if we do have some open loops, we'll get greater clarity as we continue tomorrow, Mirza Hashem. Says the Mechaber, Siman Taf Nun Zayin, Din Hanhagas Chala B'Isas Matzah. How do we comport ourselves? How do we apply the halachas of challah when it comes to the matzah dough, uboy bei seifim. And here we have two seifim. Says the Mechaber in Seif Aleph, mipnei shetzarich ledakdek b'shir ha'isa. Since we just said in Siman Taf Nun Vav that we have to be careful with the dough that we prepare for the matzah, shaloi lahar boispa mishum chash chimutz, that we should not make it overly large, because by doing so we might come to a problem of chimutz, because we're not going to be able to work the entire dough. Umutav sheyamayitba, and therefore it is preferential that we should make a small dough. So now we could have a potential problem that we have a dough that is not the sheer challah. Lachain, therefore, says the Mechaber, toiv lekarev ha'isais yachad. It is preferable, it is proper that you should pull the individual doughs next to each other. You should bring them close to each other. B'shas afrashas challah, when you're ready to be mafresh the challah, sheyishku zu bazu, that they should literally sheyishku, that they should connect one to the other. Deshema yesh b'hem achas shaloi haya b'keshir, because unless we combine these toes, unless we touch these doughs together, so that we could be mitzdaref them, so that they should join for a shir challah, we might have a problem where we might have dough here that is not the shir challah. Okay, you know what? Let's stop here for a moment and let's go into the Mishnah Berurah, who will explain this. Eis Katan Aleph, Shaloi lahar boispa. We said that lechatchila we don't want to make a large dough. Kamavur b'siman shalafnei zeh, like we just explained in Siman Taf Nun Vav. So therefore, when you make your individual small doughs, what should you do? Eis Katan Beis. We should lekarev ha'isais. We should put the doughs next to each other. Ritzaynai loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say over here is, Achar shalosh isa harishayna. After you knead your first dough, tehei munachas ala shulchan. Put that dough on the table. Ve'echad yasik ba ad sheyalushu oid isa acheres. And somebody else will work and manipulate that dough until another person needs a second dough. Or you could have two individuals, each one kneading a separate dough in two different kneading bowls. And between the two doughs, you'll definitely have a shir challah. When you prepare each individual dough, you're trying to be careful that each one is not larger than the shir challah. Now, one of them might perhaps be less than the shir challah, but it's not going to be a lot less than a shir challah. So between two doughs, you'll definitely have a shir challah. So prepare two doughs and then place the two doughs next to each other so that they're touching each other. Sheyishku zu bazu, that they should, I believe literally this means they should kiss each other. They should be touching each other. Ritzayna loymar, what the Mechaber wants to say here is, sheyidbeku ha'isais zu bazu, that the doughs should stick to each other, ad she'im yispardu, and they should be stuck to each other to the extent that if you pull them apart to separate them, yitolshu akas mechaverto ma'at, each one will pull a small amount of dough off of the other one. So we want you to take these two doughs and we want you to stick them together so that they actually do stick to each other. And if you pull them apart, this one's going to pull a little dough from this one's going to pull a little dough from the other one. The dibuk kazeh, and when they're stuck to each other to this extent, mechashvan liisa achas, now they're considered to be one dough. Ukishenital chala me'achas, and if you're mafresh chala from one of these doughs, sagi, it is enough. It is considered that you are mafresh from both doughs. So by putting these two doughs together, you now are sure that you have a sheer challah. You now certainly have a dough here that's chayiv and challah. And when you're mafresh, even though you're only going to be mafresh maybe from one side, it doesn't matter because it's all one dough. So when you're mafresh from one, you cover the entire dough. And the achronim write, if you're dealing with a very stiff, hard dough, it's not a soft, mushy dough, then you can't really stick them together, because while they might be touching each other, they don't stick together, and therefore it's not considered mitzoref. It's not considered combined. So then pushing them together would not have the effect of being mitzvah of them. That does not combine them into one dough. So what should you do in such a case? If you have a dry, firmer dough, so that you cannot stick it together to be mitzvah it. In that case, what you would have to do is you would have to take both doughs and put them together into one keli. Or by covering it with a mappa, with a cloth, with a towel, which the Bir Halacha goes to great length over here to discuss what does kisoy mappa mean. Kisoy mappa does not mean just putting a cloth on top of it. It means surrounding it. It means the cloth goes under it and over it and on the sides. Okay, so far, what did we say here? If you're going to have small doughs, so we have this potential problem that each individual dough might not have a shir challah, so you have to combine the multiple doughs to make sure you have a shir challah, and then you'll be mafresh challah with a bracha, and wherever you take from, you'll cover all the multiple doughs. Now, the Mechaber said, what was the problem? The Mechaber spelled out the problem, and he said, Deshema yesh b'amacha shaloyaya b'kashir. Maybe there's a dough that's not large enough to have a shir challah. So the Mishnah Berurah here in Eis Katan Daled expands on what the potential problem is. What's the risk here? Deshema yesh ritzaynoi loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say is, v'im kain, if you will have a dough, right? You made 3 different doughs here. Now, maybe dough number 2 is too small. Ritzaynoi loymar. V'im kain, now, if you're going to go ahead and make a bracha on hafrashas challah on each one of these doughs independently, the bracha that you made on dough number 2 is going to be a bracha levatala, because dough number 2 is not a shir challah. You made a bracha lahafresh challah bin isa, and you went and you were mafresh challah. Okay, you voluntarily were mafresh challah, but you made a bracha levatala because this dough is not chayav in challah. And there's another potential problem here. The chayshinan, because we need to worry. Im yesh eze min isais she'ein behen shir challah. Let's say you made 4 doughs, and let's say from the 4 doughs, 2 of them had a shir challah, and 2 of them individually did not have a shir challah. Okay, now let's follow this. Imkain hafrashasan lav klumhu. So dough number 1 did not have a shir challah on its own. Dough number 2 did not have a shir challah on its own. Dough number 3 and dough number 4 maybe did have a shir challah on their own, each one independently. Now you made 4 brachas and you are mafresh challah. So when you are mafresh challah from dough number 1, you accomplished nothing, because dough number 1 wasn't chayiv in challah. When you were mafresh challah from dough number 2, again, you accomplished nothing. Dough number 2 wasn't chayiv in challah. Dough number 3 and dough number 4, you made a good bracha and you made a good hafrasha from each one. So dough number 3 and dough number 4 are out of the scenario here. They're taken care of. But you still have dough number 1 and dough number 2. Each one independently did not have a shir challah. You are mafresh from each one independently, but your hafrasha was worthless because you are mafresh from a dough that's not chayiv in challah, and your bracha was a bracha levatala. But now we're not finished. There's still another problem. V'shema akar kach la'akar afiyasan. Now you're going to go ahead and you're going to bake these doughs into matzah. What's going to happen when the matzah comes out of the oven? You're going to take the matzahs and you're going to put the matzahs in a basket. Now matzahs from dough number 1 and matzahs from dough number 2 might be placed together in the same basket. You know what's going to happen now? Now they're chayiv in challah. Now they're chayiv in challah because the basket was mitzdaref them. Now they're chayiv in challah. V'shema achakak la'akar afiyasan. Maybe now after you bake the matzahs that are made out of these doughs, yachnisem la'matzahs b'kli echad v'yitztarfu. Now they're going to combine in the basket to a shir challah. V'yischayvu b'challah min adin. And now this is chayiv in challah. And you're not going to be mafresh challah because you think you were mafresh challah. You think you were already mafresh challah from dough number 1 and dough number 2. But that afrosha was worthless because at that point in time it wasn't chayiv in challah. Now the matzahs from dough number 1 and dough number 2 got put into a basket together. Now you have a share challah in that basket. The basket is mitzaref them. Now it's chayiv in challah. Now the whole basket is chayiv in challah. You're not going to be mafresh. You're going to eat it. You're going to eat tevel. V'nim tzeichel tevel. Uvemokem shenagu ha'olam lalosh isais gedolos miyashir challah u'kemay shehuva b'sayv siman shalafnei zeh b'mishnah Berurah. In bakeries where they go with the lenient opinion that we saw earlier in the share and yesterday in the previous siman, where they're not makbid on having small doughs, where they do bake larger doughs. So each dough is chayiv and challah. Hey, mafresh and challah mikol isa v'isa b'fnei atzma. So they're mafresh challah from each dough. The minig is that a different woman is mafresh from each batch and makes a bracha. If one person is going to be mafresh from all of them, he can make one bracha and he can be mafresh from multiple doughs. He doesn't need a new bracha each time. If he's not mafsik in between each afrasha, besicha, by speaking with talk, she'ena me'inyan alisha, does not pertain to what they're doing, to the baking process. This meaning that some people have, that when they go to be mafresh challah from the dough, they fold the dough together so that they should make sure to take challah from each end of the dough. It's not a proper minig, it's not necessary. So okay, so here we understand now better what the mechaber's problem was. The mechaber's fear was that if you're not going to combine all of the doughs together to make sure that you have a shir challah between everything and then make a hafrasha on everything, there's potential problems where you might have had a dough that did not have a shir challah. Problem number 1, you might be mafresh from that dough and make a bracha l'vatala. Problem number 2, you might have multiple doughs that don't have a shir challah, and then the matzahs baked from those doughs will combine later on in the baskets, and then there'll be a chiyuv challah, and you won't be mafresh, and you'll end up eating tevel. Okay, so that's what we're up to for now. We'll continue Mirz Hashem tomorrow. We'll pick up continuing in the mechaber. Everyone should be healthy. Everybody should be well. The Rabban Shalom should have Rachmanis and Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shalom should be Megan everybody. The Rabban Shalom should protect everybody. The Rabban Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas to everybody who needs them. Everybody who's suffering should be made well. Everybody who's at risk should be protected. Gans Klal Yisrael should be protected. We all have to be mispal. We should be mispal for ourselves, for our families, for our neighbors, and for our friends, and for Gans Klal Yisrael. Shuas Hashem Karafayin. The Rabban Shalom should bring the Geula Shlema. It's like somebody told me. We all have to remember that by the Geulas Mitzrayim, let's remember that right before the Geula came, things got worse. They had the Shibud, and then Moshe Rabbeinu came, and he went to Parai, and then Parai turned around, and Parai said, stop giving them cash. So the Shibud got worse right before it got better. Mirz Hashem, it should be that the Rebbeinu Shalom just threw a great scare at us, and things got tough, and things got hard, but it should be the storm before the calm. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bring the Geula Shlema any minute. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Mashiach. We should have a Geula Shlema Meher V'Yameinu, and we should celebrate Pesach in Yerushalayim with a carbon Pesach with Alsting. Be well.